You think you have a clue about the life of a Civil War soldier. Let me tell you something you might not know. Just about everything you've seen in the movies is a complete fantasy. The glory, the so-called honor, the noble sacrifice for a cause. It's not the real story. Signing up to be a Civil War soldier was almost like signing your own death certificate, right then and there. And the truly crazy part is that dying on the battlefield was actually one of the luckier ways to go. For every single soldier who was shot down by the enemy, 2 more died, curled up in their own filth, their bodies devoured from the inside out by diseases so horrific that a modern doctor would probably need therapy just from reading the descriptions. The average man who fought in the Civil War spent fewer than 10 days of his service in actual combat. The rest of those hundreds of days were spent either marching until his feet bled right through his disintegrating shoes, or lying around in a camp where things like typhoid, dysentery, and smallpox were spreading through the tents faster than a juicy piece of gossip. Roughly 2/3 of the 620,000 soldiers who perished in the Civil War weren't killed by bullets or bayonets. No, they were taken down by microscopic enemies their bodies had never seen and had no way to fight. The hard truth is, when a young man put on that uniform, whether it was blue or gray, he wasn't just risking his life in battle. He was signing up for a daily battle for survival against starvation, exposure, sickness, and a soul-crushing boredom that would make a prison sentence look like a relaxing vacation. So yeah, your great-great-grandfather who fought at Gettysburg, he wasn't just brave for facing down enemy cannons. He was practically a superhuman for just surviving everything else that war threw at him. So, how long do you think you would last if you woke up tomorrow and found yourself in the shoes of a Civil War soldier? Would you be one of the lucky few who actually made it home? Or would you become one of the countless thousands who died without ever even seeing a battle, your body tossed into an unmarked grave, your name misspelled on some long-forgotten roster? Let's find out. Before we dive in, if stories like this help you relax, a like or subscribe would be great. Also, drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I read through them, and it's wild seeing people from places like Australia and Norway all watching the same video. All right, tonight we're heading back to the American Civil War. But hold on, are you comfortable? I'm serious, check your surroundings. Get your pillows, your blankets, the whole 9 yards. Because where we're going, you'll want to be as settled in as possible. Your eyes snap open, but all you see is darkness. For a fleeting second, you think you're still safe in your own bed, but something feels deeply wrong. The mattress under you isn't memory foam. It's just a thin layer of straw spread over hard-packed dirt. Then the smell hits you. It's a mix of body odor from dozens of unwashed men, thick wood smoke, and the sickly sweet stench of the latrine trench just about 50 yards away. It is the year 1862. You are in a Union Army training camp just outside of Washington, D.C., and you have just made the single biggest mistake of your short life. You volunteered to fight in the Civil War. Rise and shine, ladies. A voice bellows through the darkness. Fall in for roll call in 5 minutes, or you'll be scrubbing latrines with your toothbrush. You force yourself to sit up in your bunk, and your back is already aching. All around you, 30 other men are groaning and cursing as they fumble around for their clothes. Unlike the soft, warm bed you left back in 2025, This simple wooden platform barely has enough room for your body. The thin wool blanket you have is scratchy and offers almost no real protection from the morning chill. Your entire body feels stiff and sore, and you've only been here for a single night. Jesus, this isn't what I signed up for, mutters the kid next to you, a farm boy from Ohio who can't be more than 16 years old. In the dim light of the single lantern hanging from the center pole of the tent, you can see he's shivering uncontrollably. My pa's cows sleep better than this. You know what's strange? He's actually one of the more fortunate ones. Unlike the thousands of other new recruits who are sleeping on the bare ground with nothing but their coats to use as pillows. At least you have a tent over your head. Or our first day of being heroes, says an older man from across the tent, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Just wait till you boys get a taste of the food. That'll really make you feel special. You pull on your new uniform, a wool coat and trousers in a dark blue that are somehow too big in some places and too small in others. The fabric is so coarse it feels like it's trying to scrub off a layer of your skin. And even though it came straight from the quartermaster, it already stinks of harsh chemicals and old sweat. Speaking of the uniform, let me paint you a clearer picture. These were not the tailored, perfectly fitted outfits you're used to seeing in Hollywood films. The Union Army ordered its uniforms in just 4 basic sizes: small, medium, large, and extra large. Just try to imagine fitting every single body type in America into only 4 sizes of clothing. The result was that almost nobody had a uniform that actually fit them properly. You can see a short, skinny guy across the tent with sleeves that hang way past his fingertips and pants he has to hold up with both suspenders and a belt. Meanwhile, the burly blacksmith 2 bunks down from you looks like he's squeezed into his little brother's clothes. The buttons on his jacket are straining against his chest, and the pants end awkwardly high above his ankles. Move your asses. The sergeant's voice cuts right through your thoughts. The Union ain't paying you to stand around admiring yourselves. You stumble outside into the pre-dawn chill, joining a ragged line of other recruits just like you. The training camp stretches out before you, a massive city of white canvas tents all arranged in neat, orderly rows. Smoke is rising from countless cook fires as far as the eye can see. It's actually an impressive sight. It looks like an entire town just sprouted up overnight. What's not so impressive is the smell. Thousands of men living in such close quarters with the bare minimum of sanitation creates an odor that's almost thick enough to see. The latrines are nothing more than long trenches dug downwind of the camp if you're lucky. And bathing is a rare luxury, not a daily routine. Your nostrils burn with the combination of wood smoke, unwashed bodies, horse manure, and that sweet sour stench of sickness that already seems to hang heavy over parts of the camp. Name. Barks a tired-looking officer holding a clipboard. You give him your name, and he checks it off without even a glance in your direction. To him, you're just another body, another statistic waiting to happen. Company K, 140th Regiment, he says, pointing you toward a group of men who look just as bewildered as you feel. You join them just as the sun starts to peek over the horizon, casting long, dark shadows across the camp. The day is officially beginning, and with it, your first real taste of Army life. All right, you sorry lot. A weathered sergeant addresses your group. His face looks like tanned leather creased by years of sun and hardship. Today, you're going to learn how to be soldiers. Most of you won't be worth a damn for weeks, but the thing is, we don't have weeks. The Rebs aren't going to wait for you to get comfortable. He walks down the line, eyeing each of you like you're livestock at an auction. Forget everything you think you know about war, he continues. It ain't glorious, it ain't quick, and it sure as hell ain't fair. Your job is simple. You do exactly what I tell you to do, exactly when I tell you to do it. That's how you stay alive. The man standing next to you whispers, "My pa said we'd whip the Rebs in a month and be home in time for the harvest." The sergeant's hearing is apparently much better than you'd expect. He stops directly in front of the man who whispered, his nose just inches from the terrified recruit's face. "Your pa ever been to war, boy?" he asks, his voice dangerously soft. No, Sergeant," the recruit stammers. "Then your pa doesn't know shit," the sergeant replies. "None of you do, but you're going to learn, those of you that live anyway." And with that cheerful introduction, your training officially begins. The next few hours are a complete blur of marching formations and then even more marching. Left foot, right foot, about face, turn. The sergeant screams corrections at anyone who takes a wrong step, which is pretty much everyone. Your shoulders ache from holding your rifle at the proper angle. Your feet are throbbing in boots that weren't made for your specific feet, because back in the 1860s, there was no such thing as a left and a right shoe. Both of your boots are identical, and they only start to take the shape of your feet after weeks of painful breaking in. Wait, you didn't know that? Yeah. Civil War soldiers' boots were completely symmetrical. Just imagine wearing two left shoes, except they're both actually neither shoes, and they're made of stiff leather with wooden soles and absolutely zero cushioning. By the end of your first day of training, you'll have blisters on top of your blisters. By mid-morning, your stomach is growling loudly. Breakfast had been coffee so bitter it made your eyes water, and a rock-hard square of what the other soldiers called hardtack. It was a simple cracker made of just flour and water that could genuinely break your teeth if you tried to bite into it directly. You watched in disgust as the more experienced soldiers softened theirs in their coffee or crumbled it up into their tin cups. "Don't you complain," an older volunteer told you when he saw the look on your face. "Wait till we're out in the field and that hardtack has worms in it. Then you'll really have something to whine about." Worms? You had asked, hopping he was just joking. Weevils, he had explained with a grim little smile, little bugs that live in the flour. After a few weeks, they hatch. Hardtack gets so infested sometimes that it'll look like it's crawling around on its own. He had laughed at your horrified expression. "It's extra protein, son. You'll learn to be grateful for it when your belly is empty enough." Now, as the sun climbs higher in the sky, you begin to understand what real training actually means. It's not just about learning to march or how to fire a rifle. It's about learning to function while your body is screaming for you to rest. It's ignoring the blisters that are forming on your feet. It's ignoring the sweat soaking through your wool uniform in the rising heat. It's ignoring the thirst that parches your throat as water becomes a carefully rationed commodity. You think this is hard. The sergeant barks as several recruits start to lag behind. Wait till you're marching 20 miles a day with a full pack in the middle of a Virginia summer heat. Wait till you haven't slept in 3 days because the Rebs keep probing your lines. This here is a Sunday stroll compared to what's coming. The morning drags on and on, an endless cycle of marching, forming lines, presenting arms, and then marching all over again. By noon, your arms feel like they're made of lead, and every single muscle in your legs is trembling. The wool uniform that seemed just a little uncomfortable at dawn is now a personal torture device, trapping heat against your skin until you feel like you're marinating in your own sweat. But the real shock comes when the training pauses for the midday meal. Dinner, someone calls out, and there's a rush toward the cook fires. You join the line, tin plate and cup in hand, hopping for something substantial after the morning's intense exertion. What you get is a ladle of salt pork swimming in its own grease. You also get another piece of hardtack and more of that bitter coffee. This, you're slowly learning, is the standard fare of a Union soldier. It is monotonous, barely nutritious, and utterly unappetizing. "Better get used to it," says the Ohio farm boy as he sits down beside you. His face is red from the exertion and a fresh sunburn. "My brother wrote from the front that sometimes this is all they get for days on end. When they're lucky, they find a farm and they requisition some fresh food." Requisition. You ask, trying to choke down the salty pork which tastes like someone boiled a piece of leather in salt water. "Steal." He clarifies with a small smile, though don't let the officers hear you call it that. As you force yourself to eat the unappetizing meal, knowing you'll need the energy for the afternoon's training, you start to overhear snippets of conversation from the men all around you. They're from all different walks of life. These volunteers, they're farmers, clerks, blacksmiths, and factory workers. Some of them are immigrants who can barely speak English. Others are from families that have been in America for generations. All of them thought they knew what they were signing up for. All of them are now realizing, just like you, just how wrong they were. "My wife's going to have the baby before I even see a single battle," a young man says, his voice a mixture of both pride and sadness. "You better hope we're home by then," his companion replies. "My cousin joined up last year. Said they promised him it'd all be over in 3 months. He's still down in Virginia and half his company is already dead from camp fever." Camp fever. You ask before you can stop yourself. The men look at you. You're clearly a fresh fish who doesn't know a thing. "Typhoid," one of them explains, "it runs through the camps like a wildfire. That or dysentery, men are just dropping dead without ever even seeing a rebel." "My uncle was at Bull Run," another recruit adds. "He said more men in his company died from sickness than from bullets. He said you'd see a man perfectly healthy at breakfast, and he'd be in a grave by supper. A chill runs right through you despite the midday heat. You hadn't really considered this aspect of the war. The invisible enemies that kill more effectively than any Confederate sharpshooter ever could." The conversation is cut short as the sergeants begin bellowing for the afternoon formation to begin. With a groan, you rise to your feet, your muscles protesting, and you rejoin your company. The morning was just a warm-up, it seems. As the afternoon brings on more intense drills, you learn the basics of loading and firing your rifle. It's a complex, multi-step process that needs to become second nature to you. Bite the cartridge, pour the powder, ram the ball, place the cap, aim, and then fire. Under ideal conditions, a good soldier might be able to get off 3 shots in a minute. Under battle conditions, with smoke obscuring your vision and fear pumping through your veins, most men managed far fewer. Too slow. The sergeant shouts as you fumble with a tiny percussion cap. Every second you waste is another second for a reb to put a ball right through your skull. By late afternoon, your hands are blackened with gunpowder. Your shoulders ache from the rifle's recoil, and your ears are ringing from the repeated firing. When the bugle finally signals the end of training for the day, you nearly collapse with relief. But your day isn't over just yet. There are still chores to do, wood to gather for the fires, equipment to clean, and letters to write home while there's still a little bit of daylight. The camp buzzes with activity as thousands of men perform these exact same evening rituals. You sit outside your tent, rubbing your sore muscles, just watching the camp transform in the fading light. Campfires are beginning to twinkle all across the vast expanse, their smoke creating a haze that catches the colors of the sunset. Men are gathering in small groups, talking, playing cards, singing songs. In another context, it might almost seem festive. The farm boy from Ohio, you've learned his name is Thomas, sits down beside you, paper and pencil in hand. Writing to your mother, you ask. He nods, trying to figure out how to tell her about this place without making her worry. Are you going to tell her about the food? You joke. He manages a faint smile. No, she'd be on the next train down here with a basket of fried chicken and cornbread. His smile fades away. I'm not telling her about the sickness either, or about what the sergeant said about our chances. You're both quiet for a moment, just listening to the sounds of the camp, the men's voices, the occasional burst of laughter, the strains of a fiddle playing somewhere in the distance. Why'd you join up? Thomas asks you suddenly. It's a question you've been asking yourself all day long. In this moment, with your body aching and the hard realities of war beginning to sink in, the patriotic fervor that supposedly drove men to enlist seems distant and incredibly naive. Seemed like the right thing to do, you answer vaguely. He nods as if that makes perfect sense to him. I couldn't just stay on the farm while other men were out here fighting. It wouldn't have been right. He looks down at his half-written letter, though I'm starting to think Pa was right about waiting for the draft. Might have had a few more months of Ma's cooking. As darkness falls completely, the bugle sounds once again. It's time for evening roll call and then, finally, sleep. You rise stiffly, already dreading another night on the hard bunk, another dawn of endless training. The sergeant moves down the line, checking off names, making sure no one has deserted after their very first taste of Army life. When he's done, he addresses the company. You all did passably today, he says, which seems to be high praise coming from him. Remember what you learned. Practice your drills, rest well. Tomorrow is going to be harder. With that cheerful thought, you're dismissed to your tents. As you lie there on your bunk, staring up at the canvas ceiling, listening to the sounds of men settling in all around you, reality truly begins to sink in. This is your life now. The hard bunk, the terrible food, the exhausting training, and you haven't even left the camp yet. Ahead of you lies the march to the front. The terror of battle, the risk of wounds and disease, the comfortable bed you woke up in this morning, back in your real life, now seems like a distant, impossible dream. Thomas is already snoring softly beside you, his body too exhausted to stay awake despite the discomfort. Others are whispering, playing quiet card games by lantern light, writing just one more paragraph to their loved ones back home. You close your eyes, trying to find a position that doesn't press on a new bruise or a sore muscle. Tomorrow will come all too soon with its bugle call and shouting sergeants and endless, grueling drills. But for now, in this brief moment of rest, you wonder, will you be one of the ones who survives this war? Or will you become just another statistic, another name on a regiment's long casualty list? As sleep finally begins to claim you, one thing becomes abundantly clear. Survival here isn't just about avoiding enemy bullets. It's about enduring day after day, hardship after hardship. The true test of a Civil War soldier wasn't just courage in the heat of battle. It was the grim determination to just keep going when every part of you wanted to give up. And tomorrow, your real test begins. The bugle tears through your dreams like a bayonet. Your body physically hurts from yesterday's drills, but there's no time to ease into wakefulness. The sergeant is already barking orders before your eyes are even fully open. On your feet, you miserable excuses for soldiers. Sun's already wasting daylight while you're lying there like pampered house cats. It's your second day in camp and your muscles scream in protest as you roll off the hard bunk. The kid next to you, Thomas, you remember his name, looks even worse. His hands are blistered raw from yesterday's rifle drills, and his face is sunburned to a painful-looking shade of red. "I can't feel my legs," he mutters, wincing as he pulls on his stiff boots. "Better numb than gone," replies an older volunteer, already dressed and rolling his blanket with a practiced efficiency. "My cousin lost both of his at Shiloh. Grape shot, he said he felt them burn for weeks after they were buried somewhere in Tennessee. And that's your good morning greeting in the Union Army." You stumble outside, blinking in the harsh light of dawn. The camp is already buzzing with activity. Thousands of men are performing their morning routines with varying degrees of efficiency. Smoke rises from hundreds of cooking fires as the company cooks prepare the morning meal, if you can even call it that. "Fall in for roll call," the sergeant shouts, and you join the ragged line forming up in front of your tent. Names are called, responses are given. 2 men from another company are missing, deserted in the night. Someone whispers down the line. You're not entirely surprised. After just one day, the romantic idea of being a soldier has given way to the harsh reality of military life, and you haven't even faced combat yet. After roll call comes breakfast. That bitter black coffee again, another piece of hardtack, and a thin slice of salt pork that's more fat than it is meat. You watch as the veterans soften their hardtack in their coffee, and you follow their lead. It's still barely edible, but at least this way it won't break your teeth. "First day wasn't so bad, was it?" asks a soldier sitting next to you. He's older than most, maybe in his 30s, with a thick beard and knowing eyes. The name's Miller. "I've been in since '61. Not what I expected," you admit, trying to chew a particularly stubborn piece of hardtack. Miller lets out a short laugh. "None of us expected this. We all thought we'd march off to one big battle, whip the Rebs, and be home by Christmas." He sips his coffee, grimacing at the awful taste. "That was 2 Christmases ago. How do you stand it?" you ask before you can stop yourself. Miller considers this for a moment, scratching his beard. "You get used to some things. The food never gets any better, though. Here's a little tip for you. Save some of that salt pork fat. It's good for greasing your boots and your rifle, keeps them from rusting up." You look down at the greasy mess on your plate with a newfound appreciation. It's not just bad food, it's multi-purpose bad food. The morning brings more drills, but today there's a new element. Working as a single unit, your company forms lines, practices marching in formation, and learns the very basics of battlefield maneuvers. The importance of it all becomes clear pretty quickly. In the chaos of battle, these formations are your lifeline, the only hope you have of functioning amid all the smoke and terror. Tighten that line, the sergeant bellows as your company attempts to march in step. In a battle, a gap in the line is where the enemy breaks through. A gap in the line means dead men. By mid-morning, sweat is pouring down your face. The wool uniform that seemed just a little uncomfortable yesterday is now a personal instrument of torture. It's like wearing a heavy blanket in a steam room. The coarse fabric chafes against your skin everywhere it touches, and the areas where it doesn't are completely soaked with your sweat. Wool uniforms in the summer, mutters the man next to you during a brief water break. Whoever thought of that never actually had to wear one. The blue shows the blood less, replies another soldier. Trust me, that matters more than you think. Not the most comforting thought as you gulp down warm water from your canteen. After the morning drills, your company is assigned to fatigue duty, which is the endless list of chores that keep a military camp functioning. Today, it's latrine duty, and your task is digging new trenches for the camp's toilets. Let me paint you a picture of Civil War sanitation, because it's definitely not what you're imagining. The latrines are just long, open trenches dug about 100 yards downwind from the camp. There are no buildings, no privacy, just trenches with logs laid across them for soldiers to sit on. When a trench fills up, it's covered over with dirt and a new one is dug right next to it. The Rebs can smell our camp before they can see it, jokes one of the veterans as you dig. We might as well send up a flag saying the Yankees are here. The stench is absolutely horrific, especially in the growing heat of the day. Several men start to vomit as they dig, which only adds to the awful miasma. You breathe through your mouth, trying not to gag, focusing on the mechanical motion of shovel into earth, dirt into pile. You know what the real killer in this army is, asks Miller, who's digging right beside you. When you shake your head no, he points his shovel toward the trenches. This right here, typhoid, dysentery, cholera. They kill more of us than rebel bullets ever will. Men drinking from a stream downstream from where other men are, well, you get the idea. It's a wonder any of us are still alive. You look down at the dirty hands holding your shovel. You think about the food you ate this morning, prepared by men with hands that were just as dirty. And suddenly, the combat death rate seems almost merciful compared to the slow, agonizing death from disease. By noon you're back at the company street, the space between the rows of tents that serves as your unit's main gathering place. The afternoon is devoted to weapons training. You're learning how to clean and maintain your rifle. This, at least, seems practical, though the intricate process of maintaining a Civil War-era firearm is far more complex than you ever imagined. Your rifle is your wife now, the sergeant explains, packing back and forth before the company. You will care for it better than you care for yourself. You clean it when it's dirty. You oil it when it's dry. You protect it from the rain and the mud. Because when the shooting starts, a fouled rifle is a death sentence, yours. The process is meticulous. Each and every part must be cleaned, oiled, and inspected. The slightest bit of rust or debris could cause a misfire at the most critical moment. As you work, Miller shows you a few tricks that aren't in the official manual. How to use coffee to clean the barrel when the proper supplies run out. How to tell if your percussion caps are still good. How a simple cork stopper can keep moisture out of the barrel during rainy marches. I learned all this the hard way, he says as he demonstrates how to properly fold a cleaning patch. The first battle I was in, my rifle misfired 3 times. I thought I was going to die right there with a useless piece of iron in my hands. As the afternoon wears on, you notice a commotion at the edge of the camp. A wagon has arrived and it's surrounded by excited men. Mail call, someone shouts, and there's an immediate rush toward the wagon. The company clerk stands with a big stack of letters, calling out names. When your name isn't called, you feel a surprising pang of disappointment, even though you logically know there's been no time for a letter to actually reach you. Thomas, however, receives a thick envelope that makes his whole face light up. "It's from Ma," he says, clutching it like it's a piece of treasure. "She probably wrote it before I even left home." Mail, you're quickly learning, isn't just communication. It's a lifeline to another world. You see how men's faces transform when their names are called, how they retreat to private corners to devour the words from home. The lucky ones get to share cookies, dried fruit, or other treats sent by their loving families. The unlucky ones just stare at the ground, trying to hide their disappointment. One soldier tears open his letter, reads the first few lines, and his face just crumples. He walks away quickly, trying to hide his tears from the others. "Bad news," Miller explains quietly. "It happens all the time. Life doesn't just stop for us while we're away. People get sick, farms fail, wives find other men. Some days I think that mail wagon brings more misery than the battlefield itself." After mail call comes another round of drilling. Then evening mess. It's beans today. A welcome change from the salt pork, though they're undercooked and incredibly bland. As the sun begins to set, you finally have your first real free time since you arrived. Some men are writing letters, hunched over makeshift desks. Others are playing cards, using hardtack crumbs as poker chips. A fiddle starts up somewhere down the company street and a small group forms, singing familiar songs from home. You sit outside your tent, your muscles aching, watching the camp settle into its evening rhythms. Despite the discomfort and the dreariness, there's something fascinating about this temporary city of men. Every state in the Union is represented here. Every trade and profession, every walk of life. The Ohio boys are organizing a baseball game for tomorrow if we don't march, Thomas says, sitting down beside you. "Do you play?" Before you can answer, shouting erupts from a nearby tent. 2 men are squared off, fists raised, while others rush in to separate them. "Jenkins said Richmond would fall by August," explains a spectator to the gathering crowd. "Patterson called him a damn fool optimist." The fight is quickly broken up by a corporal. Both men are sent to cool off on opposite sides of the camp. But the incident highlights the tension that's always simmering just beneath the surface. Boredom, frustration, fear, all of it just looking for an outlet. "It happens every day," says Miller, who has appeared beside you. "Too many men packed too tight with nothing to do but think. It's a bad combination." He nods toward another part of the camp where soldiers are clustered around a man dealing cards. That's why gambling is so popular. It takes your mind off things. "What about the drinking I've heard about?" you ask, having noticed the complete absence of alcohol in the camp. Miller snorts. "The officers get their whiskey rations. Us regular folks, we have to make do with what we can find or smuggle in. Payday brings the sutlers with their overpriced hooch. Until then, it's this fine establishment." He gestures around at the dusty camp with a mock grandeur. As darkness falls completely, Men begin to retire to their tents. The day's exertions make sleep come easier than it did last night, despite the hard bunk and the wool blanket that itches against your skin. Just as you're drifting off, a commotion startles you awake. There's shouting, the sound of running feet. For a moment you think it's a surprise attack, but the voices don't sound alarmed. They sound excited. New fish, someone calls out. We've got fresh meat coming in. You follow Thomas and the others outside. A column of new recruits is marching into the camp looking just as you must have yesterday. They have clean uniforms, uncertain faces, and they still carry the look of civilians despite their new military dress. God, were we that green? Thomas whispers. Greener, Miller replies with a little chuckle. At least these poor bastards will have you to show them the ropes. The thought is startling, that after just one full day, you're already becoming a veteran compared to someone else. The rate at which civilian men are transformed into soldiers is both disturbing and impressive. As the new recruits are assigned to their companies, a low rumble of thunder sounds in the distance. The veterans immediately look up, their faces growing serious. Rain's coming, says Miller, sniffing the air. Better check your gear. Make sure nothing's going to get soaked. You return to your tent, securing your belongings as best you can. The canvas shelter is supposedly waterproof, but the older men's concern suggests otherwise. You soon learn why, as the first heavy drops begin to fall, quickly turning into a downpour. Water immediately finds every single seam and weak spot in the canvas. Small leaks start to appear, dripping onto bunks and equipment. Outside, the previously dusty paths between the tents transform into slicks of mud. Men rush to dig drainage ditches around their tents, while others place their precious items in the driest corners they can find. Welcome to the glamorous army life, Miller jokes as he positions his cup to catch a leak that's dripping directly over his bunk, where even the sky is trying to kill you. The rain continues on through the night, a constant drumming on the canvas that makes sleep nearly impossible. By dawn, the entire camp is a quagmire of thick mud. Morning roll call is conducted under a steadily dripping sky. Soldiers are standing in ankle-deep muck. Breakfast is even less appetizing than usual. The coffee is watered down by the rain. The hardtack is turning to mush. The day's training will continue regardless of the weather. The sergeant informs you with obvious relish. If anything, he seems pleased by the miserable conditions. You think the Rebs are going to stop fighting because of a little rain. He barks. Weather's just another enemy you have to overcome. As you slosh through the mud toward the drill field, Thomas slips and falls face first into a large puddle. When he gets up, his once blue uniform is a uniform brown from his chest down to his knees. My ma's going to kill me, he mutters, trying unsuccessfully to wipe away the mud. She spent 3 days sewing this uniform. Your ma's not here, the sergeant says, overhearing him, and that mud might just save your life. Shiny brass buttons make for fine targets for rebel sharpshooters. The morning's drill is a special kind of misery. You have to keep your rifles dry despite the pouring rain. You have to maintain formations in slippery mud. Your wool uniforms grow heavier with every passing minute as they absorb more and more water. By midday, you're soaked to the skin, chilled to the bone despite the summer temperature. Your hands are raw and wrinkled. Could be worse, says a veteran as you all huddle under a makeshift shelter during a brief break. Winter in Virginia, now that's true misery. The mud is so deep it'll swallow wagons whole, men losing their toes to frostbite. Give me a summer rain any day. The rain finally lets up by the afternoon, but the damage is done. The camp has been transformed into a vast mud pit. Worse, you begin to hear coughing from various tents around you. It's the first sign of the colds and lung ailments that follow every single soaking. That evening, as you try to dry your few possessions by a smoky fire, Miller sits down beside you. He's been watching you throughout the day. You realize not just you, but all the new recruits, gauging who might have what it takes to survive. 2 days in, he says, still glad you joined up. You consider the question seriously. Your body aches in places you didn't even know could ache. You're damp, you're dirty, and you're hungry despite having eaten 3 meals today. You've been shouted at, worked to exhaustion, and introduced to the grim realities of camp disease and sanitation. And yet, there's something else too. A growing sense of belonging, of shared hardship that is creating bonds that civilian life rarely forges. When Thomas slipped in the mud, 3 men immediately moved to help him up. When the rations were distributed, you saw veterans showing the newcomers how to make the most of the meager offerings. Ask me after I've seen a battle, you finally reply. Miller nods, seeming to approve of your answer. Smart, that's when you really know. He pokes at the fire with a stick, sending sparks up into the darkening sky. The truth is, the fighting isn't even the hardest part for most of us. It's this. The waiting, the marching, the sickness. A battle, at least, happens fast. Camp life just drags on forever. As night falls again, you settle into your damp bunk, listening to the sounds of the camp. Men coughing, quiet conversations, someone softly playing a harmonica. Your second full day as a soldier is ending, and already your civilian life seems distant, almost unreal. Tomorrow, you'll learn, brings a new challenge, a practice march with your full pack and equipment. The sergeants call it a little stroll of 15 miles. The veterans call it the first culling, the march that separates those who might survive from those who definitely won't. As you drift off towards sleep, you wonder which group you'll fall into. Your body is already protesting the abuses of just 2 days. How will it handle 15 miles with 40 pounds of gear? How will it handle months of marching or the terror of battle? In your last conscious moments, you realize something has changed since yesterday. You're no longer just an observer in this strange new world of the Civil War soldier. You're becoming a part of it, your body and your mind adapting, however painfully, to its demands, and tomorrow is going to demand even more. The 15-mile march begins at dawn. Your stomach churns with a mixture of hunger and dread as you strap on all of your equipment. You have a haversack with rations, a canteen, a cartridge box, and most crucially, your knapsack. The veterans call it the elephant, and now you're starting to understand why. It's loaded with your blanket, spare clothing, personal items, and your share of the company equipment. It feels like there's a small child sitting on your shoulders. Straighten those lines. The sergeant barks as your company forms up. This ain't no Sunday stroll. Show me your soldiers, not a bunch of schoolgirls on a picnic. The sun hasn't even cleared the trees yet, but already sweat is trickling down your back under the heavy wool uniform. You adjust the straps of your knapsack one more time, trying to find some configuration that doesn't immediately send a shooting pain through your shoulders. The first mile's the easiest, Miller murmurs beside you. He's transformed his knapsack somehow. He's added leather reinforcements to the straps and rigged a belt that transfers some of the weight to his hips. The 10th mile is what separates the men from the boys. The 15th mile separates the living from the dead. The drums begin, setting the marching pace, and your company moves out. The rhythm is brisk but not punishing. It's about 110 steps per minute, designed to cover ground efficiently while conserving energy, in theory anyway. The first hour isn't so bad. The morning is cool, your legs are fresh, and there's a certain pride in being part of this long blue column snaking its way through the countryside. Flags are fluttering in the breeze. Officers ride alongside on horseback. And if you squint just right, it almost looks like one of those heroic paintings of armies on the march. Then reality sets in. By the second hour, the sun has climbed higher, beating down on your blue wool uniform. The dust kicked up by thousands of marching feet coats your face, clings to your sweaty skin, and turns to mud in your mouth. There's no talking now. Every breath is precious, used only for the effort of putting one foot in front of the other. Water discipline an officer calls out as men begin reaching for their canteens. 2 swallows every hour. We've got miles to go. You've already drained half your canteen. It's a rookie mistake. Now you'll have to ration what's left, your mouth growing drier and drier with each dusty step. The third hour brings the first casualties, not from enemy fire, but from the march itself. A man collapses a dozen rows ahead of you, his face turning purple from heat exhaustion. The column parts around him like a stream around a rock. 2 men drag him to the side of the road where a medical wagon will eventually collect him, if he's lucky. Eyes front, the sergeant shouts when heads turn to watch, "Keep moving." Another man stumbles out of the formation, vomiting into the ditch. He tries to rejoin the march but falls down again. No one stops to help him. The column has its own momentum now. It's a beast that can't be halted for individual suffering. Happens every march. Thomas pants beside you. His face is streaked with dust and sweat. His eyes are glazed over with fatigue. The sergeant says if you fall out once, you'll fall out again. He says some men just ain't built for soldiering. You wonder what not being built for soldiering means for those men. A discharge, an assignment to garrison duty, or just endless torment until they either toughen up or desert. By midday, your shoulders are on fire, raw beneath the straps of your knapsack. Each step sends a jolt of pain up your spine. Your feet, already blistered from the previous days, now feel like they're being stabbed with each and every step. But you keep on marching because stopping seems worse somehow. The column halts at a creek for a brief rest. Men collapse on the banks, shedding their equipment, plunging their faces into the cool water despite the officer's warnings about disease. You ease your knapsack off with a groan, feeling the blood rush back into your shoulders. Halfway there, Miller says, settling down beside you. Unlike most of the men, he seems barely winded, his movements economical, always preserving energy. How are you holding up? You're too exhausted to lie. I don't think I can make another mile. Miller nods as if he expected this answer. From his haversack, he pulls out a small tin, opening it to reveal a brownish paste. Rub this on your shoulders and your feet. It won't heal them, but it'll numb them enough for you to finish. The salve smells medicinal with hints of camphor and something herbal. What is it? You ask as you gingerly apply it to your raw skin. It's stuff the Indians use. I traded a rebel prisoner my pocket watch for the recipe. Miller shrugs. A man makes do. The relief is almost immediate. It's not a cure, but it's a blessed dulling of the pain. By the time the drums signal the resumption of the march, you feel like you might actually survive this. The afternoon brings new challenges. The road narrows, forcing the column to compress. Now you're marching so close to the man in front that your rifle barrel is just inches from his knapsack. The pace becomes uneven. It's a hurry up and wait situation, running a few steps to close the gaps, then standing still for minutes while some obstruction up ahead is cleared. This is how most men get killed, Miller tells you during one such halt. Not by bullets, but by the march. Your feet swell up. You can't get your boots off. An infection sets in. The surgeon takes your leg. Then the fever takes the man. It's a cheerful thought to accompany you for the final miles. The sun is low in the sky when your company finally reaches the designated campsite. You've marched 15 miles with your full gear, and every part of your body registers the achievement with intense pain. Men collapse right where they stand, too exhausted to even think about setting up tents. No rest for you yet, the sergeant's voice cuts through the fatigue. This camp needs setting up before it gets dark. Move your asses. Somehow, you find the strength to help erect the tents, gather firewood, and dig some rudimentary latrines. The work is mechanical now, your body operating on some reserve of energy you didn't even know you had. It's only when the essential tasks are complete that you're finally allowed to rest. You sink to the ground outside your tent, too tired to even take off your boots. Thomas collapses beside you, his face ashen beneath the sunburn and the dirt. "I can't feel my feet," he says. "Is that a bad thing?" "Take your boots off," Miller orders, appearing beside you, both of you now. The effort is excruciating. Your boots have molded to your swollen feet, and removing them feels like you're peeling off a layer of your own skin. When they finally come free, the smell is horrific. It's a mix of blood, sweat, and the beginning of an infection. Miller examines Thomas's feet first, his expression grim. "Trench foot is starting. You're lucky we're not marching tomorrow." He reaches into his haversack and pulls out a small bottle. "Clean them with this, then let them air dry. No socks until the morning." The liquid stings like fire, but you follow his instructions, watching in horror as the water turns pink with blood from blisters you didn't even feel breaking. "How do you know all of this?" You ask Miller as he checks your feet with a professional detachment. "This is the 4th Regiment I've served in," he replies, applying his salve to the worst spots. "In the first one I lost half my foot to gangrene. I learned my lesson. You take care of your feet or you won't have any feet to take care of." The evening brings a new kind of misery. Having pushed your body far beyond its limits, you now find you can't sleep. Despite a bone-deep exhaustion, every muscle in your body throbs. Your shoulders feel flayed. Your feet pulse with a constant pain. All around you, men are groaning, shifting their positions, seeking a comfort that simply doesn't exist on the hard ground. "Sing something, Joe." Someone calls out from the darkness, and a tenor voice begins a slow, mournful rendition of "Home, Sweet Home." Other voices join in, creating a haunting chorus that spreads throughout the camp. You just lie there, staring up at the stars, listening to hundreds of homesick men sing about the one place they'd all rather be. Morning comes too soon, but it brings a blessed announcement, a day of rest before continuing the march. The officers call it a tactical necessity. The enlisted men call it not wanting half the regiment to drop dead. You use the time to tend to your battered body. Following Miller's advice, You wash your one spare pair of socks and hang them up to dry. You mend a tear in your trousers, and most importantly, you soak your feet in the nearby creek. The cold water brings immediate relief, though the sight of your feet is alarming. They're blistered, bruised, with patches of angry red where an infection is threatening to take hold. Around you, dozens of other men are doing the same thing, comparing their injuries like they're badges of honor. "I got a beauty here," says a corporal, displaying a blister the size of a silver dollar. "I'm going to name it after my ex-wife. It's painful, swollen, and full of poison." The joke earns some tired laughs. Humor, you're learning, is an essential currency in the Army. It's often dark, usually profane, but it's vital for maintaining your sanity. By midday, you feel almost human again. The rest has worked wonders, and a meal of salt beef and hardtack, while hardly appetizing, restores some of your energy. You've even managed to forage some wild berries from the edge of the camp. A tart burst of flavor that makes the hardtack almost palatable. Mail call. The announcement sends a ripple of excitement through the camp. This time, your name is called. A letter has finally caught up with you. It was forwarded from the training camp, and the thin envelope feels like a treasure in your hands. You retreat to a quiet spot to read, savoring each and every word from home. The news is mundane, local gossip, family updates, questions about Army life, but it forms a lifeline to the world you left behind. You read it 3 times before carefully folding it and putting it in your breast pocket, close to your heart. Thomas wasn't so lucky. He hovers nearby, trying not to look disappointed. "Nothing from Ma yet," he says, forcing a smile. "It's probably still on its way. You can share mine," you offer, and his face brightens as you read him the lighter parts of your letter. The afternoon brings more rest, but also preparation for the next day's march. Rumors are swirling through the camp. You're heading to Washington, or maybe to Baltimore, or straight to Richmond to end the war in one decisive battle. No one really knows, and the officers aren't telling. "It's best not to know," Miller advises as you clean your rifle together. Each day has enough of its own troubles without borrowing from tomorrow's. That evening, something unexpected happens. A wagon arrives in camp, and with it comes fresh bread, a welcome change from the hardtack, and even more surprisingly, a barrel of dried apples. The sudden luxury lifts the spirits throughout the entire camp. "It's a special treat," explains the quartermaster sergeant as he supervises the distribution. "The general's orders. He says you boys did well on the march." The dried apples are tough and overly sweet, but after days of bland rations, they taste like the finest delicacy. Men savor each and every piece, trading portions of bread for extra fruit or vice versa, according to their preference. First rule of Army life, Miller says, watching the bartering with some amusement. Enjoy the good when it comes. It never lasts long. As if to prove his point, the drums beat that evening, signaling an assembly, and your company forms up, wondering what new demand awaits. The captain appears, his face serious. "Men, our orders have changed," he announces. "We march at first light. We're joining the main army near Culpeper." Intelligence suggests that Confederate forces are massing in the area. A murmur runs through the ranks. Culpeper means Virginia. Virginia means the front lines. The front lines mean battle. Full marching order, the captain continues. 3 days' ration, 60 rounds of ammunition per man. We'll be covering 20 miles tomorrow, so rest well. The news transforms the camp. Men who were just laughing over dried apples minutes ago are now somber, checking their equipment, counting their bullets, writing hasty letters home. The veterans seem particularly focused, their movements precise, almost ritualistic. Should I be worried? You ask Miller as you prepare your gear. He looks at you, his weathered face unreadable. Yes, he says finally, but not about dying. Not yet. He nods toward where Thomas is sitting, struggling to wrap some hardtack in an oilcloth. Worry about the living. A battle's coming, and it'll change that boy forever. It'll change all of you. The man who marches into his first battle never marches out again. Someone else comes out wearing his face. You sleep poorly that night. Miller's words are echoing in your mind. Around you, the camp is restless. Men are whispering, praying, some are crying quietly in the darkness. The morning seems to arrive almost immediately. The bugle is cutting through what little sleep you manage to find. The mood is different as you form up in the pre-dawn gloom. Gone is the grousing about sore muscles and bad food. In its place is a tense silence, broken only by the necessary commands and the rhythmic stamp of boots as the column moves out. Today's march is faster, more purposeful. The officers are pushing the pace, allowing for fewer breaks. By noon, you've covered 12 miles. Your feet are once again screaming in protest, but no one falls out today. The column moves with a grim determination, each man knowing what's waiting for them ahead. The countryside changes as you march south. There are more farms, fewer towns, and increasingly hostile looks from the few civilians you encounter. This is a different Virginia from the friendly environs of Washington's outskirts. Here, you are invaders, not defenders. Keep an eye on your gear, Miller warns during a brief halt. The locals will steal anything that's not nailed down. I had a boy in my last regiment who woke up with his boots gone. He marched barefoot for a week before the quartermaster could find him replacements. As the day wears on, you begin to notice other changes. More cavalry scouts are passing the column. There are signal officers on the hilltops with flags. You hear distant rumbles that might be thunder but probably aren't. That's artillery, confirms a sergeant when someone asks. It's still miles off. Nothing to worry about yet. Yet, that word just hangs in the air, pregnant with meaning. By late afternoon, your company joins a larger encampment, part of the Army of the Potomac. Tens of thousands of men are spread out across rolling fields and woodlots. The scale of it all is staggering. Tents and wagons stretch as far as you can see. Campfires dot the landscape like a sea of fallen stars. The flags of dozens of different regiments are fluttering in the breeze. Home sweet home, Miller says as your company is directed to its assigned position, at least until the shooting starts. Setting up camp in the larger army is more orderly, more practiced. Each regiment has its own place. Each company has its specific duties. By sundown, your small piece of the vast encampment is established. The tents are erected in neat rows, the cooking fires burning steadily. The increased organization extends to the rations as well. The company cooks have set up a proper field kitchen, and tonight's meal is almost palatable. Beans with salt pork, fresh bread from the commissary wagons, and even coffee that tastes like coffee instead of boiled mud. The army runs better when it's all together, explains a corporal as you collect your portion. The general's staff is watching everything, which makes the quartermaster honest and the cooks afraid of complaints. After eating, you explore the camp with Thomas. Both of you are wide-eyed at the martial city that has sprung up around you. Sutlers have established shops selling everything from tobacco to writing paper at outrageous prices. A regimental band is playing near the headquarters. Men are gathered in groups, gambling, telling stories, cleaning their weapons. But beneath the almost festive atmosphere, you can sense a deep tension. The veterans are cleaning their rifles with methodical care. The officers are huddled over maps. The ambulance wagons are assembled in orderly rows. Their purpose is unmistakable. "We're really going to fight, aren't we?" Thomas asks. As you make your way back to your company street, his voice has lost its rural twang, flattened by fatigue and apprehension. Before you can answer, a new sound cuts through the evening air. A long roll of drums, not the usual camp signals, but something more urgent. Men are jumping to their feet all around you. Officers are shouting commands that are swallowed up in the sudden commotion. Fall in by companies. Your sergeant's voice rises above the din. Full equipment, double quick. "What's happening?" Thomas asks, his face pale as you both run toward your tent. "It's a nighttime march," says Miller, already buckling on his cartridge box. "The Rebs must be closer than we thought." Within minutes, your company is formed up. Each man is standing rigid in the line, equipment checked and ready. The captain paces before you, his face tight with concentration as he awaits orders from the regiment. They come in the form of a mounted courier who speaks briefly to the captain before galloping off to the next company. The captain turns to address the men, his voice steady but serious. "We're moving out immediately," he announces. "Confederate forces have engaged our advanced scouts near Brandy Station. We're to reinforce the line before dawn." He pauses, scanning the faces before him. "This will be a forced march through the night. No straggling, no talking. We move fast and we move quiet. Those are the general's orders." A ripple passes through the company. It's not quite fear, but it's something close to it. Night marches are dangerous, even without the enemy nearby. Men trip in the darkness, get lost, fall into ditches, and if you add the prospect of a battle at the end of it, the risk multiplies. "Check your equipment one last time," the captain continues. "We move in 5 minutes. As you adjust your straps and count your cartridges, you feel a strange calm descend upon you. After days of training, marching, and preparation, the moment is finally here. There's no more wondering what kind of soldier you'll be. By tomorrow, you'll know. Stay close to me," Miller tells you and Thomas, his voice low. "Do exactly as I do. Don't be heroes, don't be cowards. Just be soldiers." The drums tap softly, signaling the formation. Your company takes its place in the column, and without any fanfare, the night march begins. Thousands of men are moving through the darkness. Each step is bringing you closer to the moment that will define your war, your first battle. Tomorrow, you'll learn if you're truly cut out to survive as a Civil War soldier. Not just the marches, the bad food, and the disease, but the thing they've been preparing you for all along. The moment when other men are actively trying to kill you. As you march through the Virginia night, the stars cold and distant overhead, you wonder what version of yourself will exist when the sun rises again. The night march continues for hours, a ghostly column of men moving through the darkness. No talking is allowed, but the sounds of an army on the move fill the night. Thousands of boots on dirt roads, the creak of leather equipment, the occasional clink of metal against metal, and always the labored breathing of exhausted men. Your feet have gone beyond pain to a strange kind of numbness. Your shoulders no longer register the weight of your knapsack. You've entered a dreamlike state where only the next step matters. Your world has narrowed to the shadowy form of the man marching in front of you. Just before dawn, the column halts in a wooded area. Orders are passed down in whispers. Shed your knapsacks, keep your weapons and ammunition, form battle lines. The calm efficiency of the veterans is unsettling. They don't speak, they don't question, they just methodically prepare for what's coming. Men, load your weapons, the sergeant orders, his voice barely audible. Percussion caps ready but not set. We move in 5 minutes. Your hands are shaking as you tear open a paper cartridge with your teeth. The bitter taste of gunpowder fills your mouth. You pour the powder down the barrel, ram the ball home, place the percussion cap. Each step you've practiced hundreds of times, but never with the knowledge that these bullets might soon be fired at actual human beings. Thomas struggles beside you, dropping a cartridge in the dim light. "I can't," he whispers, his voice cracking. Miller kneels beside him, his steady hands guiding Thomas through the loading process. "Just like drill," he murmurs, "nothing different. Your hands know what to do, even if your mind doesn't." The first light of dawn filters through the trees as your company moves forward, part of a battle line stretching through the woods. You can hear distant popping sounds now, skirmishers exchanging fire somewhere up ahead. Occasionally, a deeper boom suggests artillery. The company emerges from the woods into a rolling field of wheat, golden in the early light. In another context, it might be beautiful. Now it's just open ground you'll have to cross under fire. Forward march. The command passes down the line and the company steps into the wheat, rifles at the ready. You're in the second row of the formation. Ahead of you, a lieutenant walks backward, keeping the line straight with quiet commands. "Dress right, keep your intervals, steady pace." The distant popping grows louder. You can see smoke now, hanging over a tree line about half a mile ahead. The skirmishers are falling back, running through the wheat toward your advancing line. One of them falls suddenly, as if he's tripped, but he doesn't get back up. "Steady, boys," the sergeant calls, "keep your line." A sound tears through the air above you. A weird, shrieking whistle that ends in a solid thump as something hits the ground behind your company. Earth and wheat spray upward. "That's artillery," says Miller, his voice flat. "They're ranging on us." Another whistle, another explosion. This one is closer. Men instinctively duck but keep on marching. The formation is still intact, still advancing at that same steady pace through the golden wheat. Then you see them, gray-clad figures emerging from the distant tree line, forming their own battle line. The enemy, real Confederate soldiers, not targets or imaginary foes from drill, but actual men with guns who want to kill you. Company, halt. The command freezes you in place. Ready arms. You raise your rifle, suddenly aware of how exposed you are in this open field. The wheat only reaches your knees. There's no concealment, no protection. Aim. You settle the sights on the gray line, now about 300 yards away and closing. You can't make out individual faces at this distance. Just a mass of men moving toward you with a deadly purpose. Fire. The company's volley crashes out. Your own rifle bucks against your shoulder. Smoke immediately obscures your vision. The acrid smell of burnt powder fills your nostrils. Through the haze, you can't tell if you hit anyone. There's no time to wonder. You're already reaching for another cartridge, beginning the loading process all over again. Load. Load, load, the sergeant shouts, moving behind the line. Your training takes over. Tear the cartridge, pour the powder, ram the ball, place the cap. All while trying to watch the enemy through the drifting smoke, trying to ignore the whistling artillery shells that are now landing with terrifying regularity. The company fires another volley, and then another. The Confederate line has halted now, and they're returning fire. You hear the distinctive whine of many balls passing overhead, a sound the veterans describe as angry bees. Some don't pass overhead but find human targets instead. The man to your left grunts and sits down suddenly, a look of surprise on his face as blood spreads across his thigh. Close up the line, the sergeant orders, and you shuffle to the left, filling the gap. Time loses all meaning. You're caught in a mechanical cycle. Load, aim, fire, and load again. The smoke becomes so thick you can barely see the enemy. You're aiming more at muzzle flashes than at actual targets. Your ears are ringing from the constant gunfire, making the sergeant's command seem distant, almost underwater. A new sound rises above the gunfire. A high, wailing cry that sends a chill down your spine. The rebel yell. The gray line is charging. Fix bayonets. The order passes down your line. Hands are fumbling to attach the long blades to the rifle barrels. Stand fast, stand fast. The Confederate charge closes the distance rapidly. Their line emerges from the smoke like avenging ghosts. At 100 yards, your company fires a devastating volley that tears huge gaps in their line. At 50 yards, you fire again. The effect is even more terrible at this range, but they just keep coming. The final moments before impact are a complete blur. You fire one last desperate shot, then suddenly they're upon you. A crash of bodies, rifle barrels, and bayonets. The neat formation dissolves into chaotic individual struggles. A bearded Confederate lunges at you, his bayonet missing your chest by mere inches. You swing your rifle like a club connecting with his shoulder. He staggers but doesn't fall, raising his weapon for another thrust. Miller appears beside you, driving his bayonet into the man's side. The Confederate crumples with a strange, soft cry that will haunt your dreams for years to come. Keep moving. Miller shouts, already turning to face another threat. Don't stand still. The hand-to-hand fighting lasts only for minutes, but it feels like hours. The Confederate charge falters, breaks, and then reverses as more Union troops arrive to reinforce your line. The gray soldiers retreat back toward the tree line, pursued by cheering blue coats. But not you. Your company has been ordered to hold its position, to reform its shattered line. As the adrenaline fades, you become aware of the aftermath all around you. Men are lying in the trampled wheat, some are moving, crying out for help, others are ominously still. The golden field is now stained red in large patches. Thomas is on his knees nearby, vomiting. His face is blackened with powder. His eyes are wide with shock, but he appears to be uninjured. Others were not so fortunate. The company has visibly shrunk. There are gaps in the line where men stood just minutes ago. Check your ammunition, the sergeant orders, moving among the survivors. We're not done yet, he's right. The battle continues on elsewhere. You can hear heavy firing off to your left where another Union division is engaged. Artillery still thunders, though it's no longer targeting your position. Stretcher bearers are moving through the wheat, collecting the wounded. The rest of the day passes in a series of advances and halts. There's sporadic firing at distant targets, long periods of tense waiting. The major part of the battle seems to have shifted elsewhere. Your company is now just a small piece in a complex chess game being played across miles of Virginia countryside. By late afternoon, it's clear the Union forces have carried the day. Confederate units are withdrawing all across the board, pursued cautiously by blue columns. Your company, having suffered heavily in the morning's engagement, is held in reserve as fresher troops lead the pursuit. As dusk approaches, you finally have time to process what you've experienced. Your uniform is stiff with dried sweat and powder residue. Your hands are black from gunpowder. Your right shoulder is bruised from the rifle's recoil. You fired approximately 40 rounds over the course of the day, though whether you actually hit anyone remains mercifully unknown. The company establishes a hasty camp near the morning's battlefield. There's no energy for proper tents. Most men simply drop where they're told, using their knapsacks as pillows. The day's fighting has left everyone hollow-eyed and silent. The usual camp banter has been replaced by thousand-yard stares. Eat something, Miller advises, handing you a piece of hardtack. It doesn't matter if you're not hungry. Your body needs it. You chew mechanically. The familiar, tasteless cracker now seems even more unappetizing. Thomas is sitting nearby. He still hasn't spoken since the fighting. He just stares at his hands as if they belong to someone else. Will he be all right? You ask Miller quietly. The veteran studies Thomas for a moment. Maybe. The first battle hits everyone different. Some talk too much, some don't talk at all. Give him time. As night falls completely, you realize something has changed within you. The fear isn't gone. If anything, having now seen combat, you're more afraid than you were before. But it's a different kind of fear, more focused, less paralyzing. You've seen the worst and you've survived, at least this time. Sleep comes in fits and starts, interrupted by vivid flashes of the day's fighting and the moans of wounded men in the nearby field hospitals. The medical tents operate all through the night. Lanterns are casting grotesque shadows as surgeons work tirelessly on broken bodies. Morning reveals the true cost of the battle. Your company musters at dawn. The gaps in the ranks are painfully obvious in the daylight. The captain reads the casualty list. 12 dead, 23 wounded, and 5 missing from a company that numbered nearly 100 just a few days ago. These losses are significant. The names wash over you. Some are familiar, others are just faces you can barely recall. Each one represents a man who was breathing, hopping, and fearing just hours ago. Now, they're just statistics in what the newspapers will call a sharp engagement, not even important enough to be remembered as a major battle. We'll be moving out within the hour, the captain announces, folding the casualty list. The enemy is retreating toward Culpeper. We're to pursue and harass their rear guard. There's no time to bury the dead. That's left to designated burial details. There's no time to properly tend to the wounded. They're evacuated to field hospitals miles behind the lines. The army just moves on. The war machine is rolling forward relentlessly. As your company prepares to march, Thomas finally speaks. "I killed someone yesterday," he says, his voice barely audible. "I shot him right in the face at 20 yards. I could see his expression change and everything." You don't know what to say. What words could possibly address such an experience? "You did what you had to," Miller tells him, checking Thomas's rifle with practiced hands. "The same as he was trying to do to you. Don't dwell on it or you'll go mad." The march resumes. Your depleted company is now part of a massive Union force flowing south like a great blue river. The mood is different. It's no longer the nervous anticipation of men heading to their first battle, but the grim determination of soldiers who know exactly what awaits them. The pursuit lasts for 3 days. It's a strange mirror of your earlier march, but with some key differences. Now you're moving through landscapes that have been transformed by war. Burned-out farmhouses, trampled fields, and hastily dug graves marking the Confederate retreat. The civilians have largely fled, leaving an eerie emptiness to the countryside. On the 3rd day, the rain begins. A steady, soaking downpour that turns the roads to mud and the streams into raging torrents. The pursuit slows, then halts as bridges wash out and supply wagons get bogged down. Your company finds itself assigned to guard a critical crossroads, watching for enemy cavalry, while engineers attempt to repair a collapsed bridge. The rain continues without a pause. The tents offer minimal protection as water finds every seam and weakness. The ground beneath you becomes a sodden mess, forcing you to sleep sitting up against trees or rocks. Food is scarce. The supply wagons can't navigate the mud-choked roads, leaving you with whatever remains of your emergency rations. "Welcome to the real Army of the Potomac," Miller says as you huddle beneath a dripping tree. March in the mud, fight in the mud, sleep in the mud, and then do it all again tomorrow. By the 4th day, cases of illness begin to appear. Men who survive the battle fall victim to exposure and exhaustion. Fevers spread through the camp. The regiment's surgeon, already overwhelmed with battle casualties, now faces a new wave of patients. Your own health remains surprisingly good. Perhaps because of Miller's herbal concoctions, or perhaps it's simply due to luck. Thomas, however, develops a hacking cough that grows worse with each passing day. "It's just a cold," he insists when you suggest he see the surgeon. Save the medicine for the really sick boys. On the 5th day, orders finally arrive. The pursuit is being abandoned. Confederate forces have escaped across the Rapidan River, establishing new defensive positions that would be too costly to assault directly. Your regiment is to march to a place called Stevensburg. There, you're to establish a more permanent camp while the generals plot the next campaign. The march to Stevensburg is a nightmare of mud and misery. Men lose their boots to the sucking earth, then continue on barefoot rather than fall behind. Wagons have to be literally dug out of mud holes every few hundred yards. The rain continues to fall, turning even the simplest tasks into trials of endurance. Thomas collapses 2 miles from the destination. His fever is so high you can feel the heat radiating from his skin. You and Miller carry him the rest of the way, his body feeling seemingly weightless despite your own exhaustion. The regimental surgeon examines him with a brief, practiced efficiency that reveals just how many such cases he's seen. Pneumonia, he diagnoses. "Get him to the hospital tent. We'll do what we can." What they can do, it turns out, is very little. Medicine in 1862 has few answers for pneumonia. They administer quinine for the fever, they apply mustard plasters to his chest, and most importantly, they keep him dry and as comfortable as possible in a crowded hospital tent. You visit whenever your duties permit, watching as Thomas grows weaker by the day. His cough deepens, bringing up alarming amounts of blood-tinged phlegm. His breathing becomes labored. Each inhalation is a visible struggle. "Write to my ma," he asks during a moment of clarity, his voice a faint whisper. "Tell her I wasn't afraid in the battle. She'll want to know that." "You'll write her yourself," you insist, trying to sound confident. "You'll be marching again in no time." He smiles faintly, not believing you but appreciating the effort. "Just make sure she knows," he says before falling into an exhausted sleep. That night, a different kind of battle rages in the hospital tent, not against Confederate soldiers, but against disease. 3 men die before dawn, their bodies quietly removed to make space for new patients. Thomas survives, but barely, his breathing growing more labored with each passing hour. The next morning brings an unexpected blessing: sunshine. After nearly a week of relentless rain, the clouds finally part, allowing the first warm rays to dry the sodden landscape. The effect on the camp's morale is immediate and profound. Men emerge from their tents like hibernating animals, spreading damp blankets and clothing on every available surface. Even the hospital benefits from the change in weather. The tent flaps are rolled up, allowing fresh air to replace the miasma of sickness and disinfectant. Thomas's cot is moved to catch a patch of sunlight, and the warmth seems to ease his breathing slightly. "It's a good sign," Miller says, visiting with you. "The sun kills the bad humors. There are always more deaths during the rainy spells. For 2 days the weather holds, and with it comes a gradual improvement in Thomas's condition. His fever breaks. His cough, while still present, is now bringing up clear phlegm instead of bloody discharge. The surgeon making his rounds nods with satisfaction. He'll live. He'll pull through. Whether he'll fight again is another question. His lungs may never be the same. While Thomas recovers, the regiment establishes a proper camp at Stevensburg. It's not the hasty bivouac of an army on the move, but a semi-permanent installation with orderly streets, proper latrines, and even a crude shower system rigged up by enterprising engineers. Your company, still under strength from battle casualties and illness, is assigned to picket duty rather than the more strenuous task of building fortifications. Each day you march to the outer perimeter of the Union position, there to watch for any enemy movement and provide an early warning of any Confederate approach. Picket duty has its own unique kind of stress. You stand for hours at the edge of woods or fields, just staring into the middle distance, jumping at every rustle of leaves or snap of twigs. The Confederate pickets are doing the same thing, often just a few hundred yards away. Occasionally, shots are exchanged, more from nervousness than at actual targets. Worst part of soldiering, Miller opines during one such watch. "I'd rather have a proper fight than this waiting. It makes the mind play tricks on you." After a week, Thomas is released from the hospital, pale and thin, but alive. He's given light duty around the camp while he regains his strength. The experience has changed him. The boyish enthusiasm has been replaced by a quiet thoughtfulness that makes him seem years older. "The doctor says I might get sent home if my lungs don't improve," he tells you one evening as you clean your rifle. A medical discharge. "That's good, isn't it?" you ask. "You'll see your family again, sleep in a real bed." He shrugs, his expression conflicted. "It feels wrong somehow, leaving you all behind like I'm running away." "Getting sick isn't running away," you say firmly. "You stood your ground in the battle. Nobody can say different." Thomas doesn't seem convinced, but the conversation is interrupted by the arrival of the mail wagon, a highlight of camp life that temporarily pushes all other concerns aside. This time, Thomas receives a thick package from home, along with several letters. His face lights up as he recognizes his mother's handwriting. The package contains knitted socks, a small fruitcake that's miraculously intact despite its long journey, and some dried apples. Thomas insists on sharing everything, his generosity extending to the entire tent. That night, your corner of the camp feels almost civilized as you feast on home-baked cake and read letters aloud by the light of a lantern. 2 days later, news spreads through the camp. Reinforcements have arrived, fresh troops to fill the gaps in the depleted companies. Your company receives 15 new men, mostly fresh recruits with a few veterans who have been transferred from other units. Among them is a slight, dark-haired boy who can't be more than 16, despite his insistence that he's 19. He's assigned to your tent, taking the space that was left vacant by a man killed in the recent battle. The name's William Jenkins. He introduces himself, his voice cracking with adolescent uncertainty. "I'm from Pennsylvania. Is it true you all fought at Brandy Station?" Just like that, you realize you've crossed an invisible line. To this boy, you're a battle-hardened veteran, someone to be respected and perhaps feared a little. The fact that you've survived exactly one battle and barely understand what happened in it doesn't matter. You've seen the elephant, as the soldiers say. You belong to a different category of human now. We were there, you confirm, seeing no need to elaborate on your limited experience. "What's it like?" Jenkins asks, his eyes wide, being in a real battle. You glance over at Thomas, who suddenly finds something fascinating to examine on his boot. Miller watches you silently, letting you handle this moment of initiation. It's not like anything they tell you. You finally say it's louder, more confusing. You don't see much through all the smoke. You just load and fire because everyone else is loading and firing. And afterward, you struggle to find the words for the hollow feeling that followed the battle. Afterward, you're just glad to be counting your toes instead of counting the holes in your body. Jenkins looks a little disappointed with this unromantic description, but before he can ask any more questions, the bugle sounds for assembly. New orders have arrived. The regiment is moving again. As you form up with the company, you realize something fundamental has changed. The man who arrived at the training camp just a few weeks ago is gone. In his place stands someone different, still afraid, still unsure of what the future holds, but somehow more solid, more present in this strange world of the Civil War. You've survived your first battle. You've watched disease claim more lives than bullets ever did. You've felt the unique brotherhood that forms when men face death together. Whether you're a good soldier or merely a lucky one remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. You're no longer just playing at war. You're living it with all of its terror, its boredom, its misery, and its occasional moments of transcendent connection. As the regiment moves out toward its next appointment with history, you take your place in the column. You're not a civilian in uniform anymore, but a soldier who's beginning to understand what that really means. The first snowflake falls like a tiny white flag of surrender. You catch it on your palm, watching it melt instantly against your skin. More follow, dancing in the wind before disappearing into the cold Virginia soil. "It's going to be a bad one," Miller pronounces, studying the gray sky with a weathered man's instinct. We'd best get to it while the ground's still soft. It's November of 1862, and your regiment has established winter quarters near Falmouth, Virginia, right across the Rappahannock River from Fredericksburg. The fall campaign season is ending. Both armies are seeking refuge from the coming winter. For the next few months, battle will give way to a different kind of fight. The struggle against the cold, the boredom, and the creeping despair that claims more soldiers than enemy bullets ever could. Winter quarters means building actual shelters, not just pitching tents. The entire regiment has transformed into a massive construction crew. Teams of men are cutting timber from the nearby forests, digging foundations and building chimneys from local stone and clay. In your own squad, you, Miller Thomas, whose lungs have improved enough to keep him with the regiment, and young Jenkins are working methodically on your winter home. Following Miller's experienced direction, you've dug a rectangular pit about 18 inches deep, 4 feet wide and 8 feet long. The deeper we dig, the warmer we'll be, Miller explains, showing Jenkins how to square the corners. Heat rises and cold drops. You want to be below the ground level. Around this foundation, you build walls of logs that are notched at the corners to fit snugly together. It's hard work, especially with limited tools. The regiment has very few proper axes, and you have to make do with a dull hatchet and a borrowed spade. Your hands, once soft from your civilian life, are now calloused and cracked, but they're stronger than you ever imagined they could be. Put mud between the logs, Miller instructs, mixing clay soil with water to create a primitive kind of mortar. Pack it in there tight. Every single gap means cold air is visiting uninvited. The hardest part is the chimney. With no brick available, you create a base of stones, then extend it upward with a wooden frame that's lined with clay. It's a precarious design that will require constant maintenance to prevent fires, but it's the best that can be managed with the materials you have available. The first snow is always a warning, Thomas says, pausing to catch his breath. His lungs, while improved, still trouble him in the cold air. My pa used to say, God sends it early to remind the fools to prepare. By nightfall, the snow is falling steadily, transforming the landscape into something alien and beautiful. Your hut is barely half finished. The walls are up, but there's no proper roof yet. Just your tent canvas stretched across the top to keep out the worst of the snow. You sleep in the unfinished shelter anyway, huddled together for warmth, your breath visible in the cold air. The temperature drops through the night and you wake up repeatedly, shivering despite your blanket and your greatcoat. By morning, a thin layer of snow covers your blankets where your breath condensed and then froze. Welcome to a winter campaign, Miller says, his beard frosted with ice. The summers for fighting, but the winters for surviving. The next day brings more snow, but also some unexpected help. A nearby cavalry unit, better supplied than your infantry regiment, trades their surplus tools for infantry assistance with their horse shelters. With proper axes and saws now available, the work progresses rapidly. By the third day, your winter hut is taking proper shape. The walls stand about 6 feet high. The roof is framed with pine saplings, and the chimney draws reasonably well, filling the small space with a blessed warmth from a carefully tended fire. We need a door next, Miller says, surveying your work with his critical eyes. something that actually keeps the cold out, not just a blanket hanging over the opening. You salvage some boards from old hardtack boxes, nailing them together to create a crude but effective door that's hung on leather hinges. Jenkins shows an unexpected talent for detail work, carefully filling the gaps with clay and moss to prevent any drafts. I worked in my uncle's carpentry shop during the summers. He explains when you comment on his skill. I never thought I'd be building my own house in the middle of a war. For that's what these structures are becoming, not just shelters, but homes. Throughout the regiment's camp, similar huts are rising from the snowy ground, each one reflecting the personality and ingenuity of its inhabitants. Some are just plain wooden boxes, while others show surprising architectural flourishes, porches, decorative chimneys, even glass windows that have been salvaged from abandoned farmhouses. A soldier makes do, Thomas observes, admiring a particularly elaborate hut where someone has created actual shingles from split wood. Give a soldier nothing but dirt and sticks, and he'll build you a palace and then complain that it needs curtains. By the end of the week, your hut is complete and none too soon. A proper winter storm descends. The wind is howling around the chimney. Snow is piling up in drifts that reach the eaves in some places. Inside, hunched around the small fire, you feel a surprising sense of contentment. The space is cramped, it's smoky, and it's primitive by any civilian standard, but compared to a tent or an open bivouac, it's practically luxurious. Home sweet home, Miller declares, using his knife to carve this sentiment into the wooden lintel above the door. At least until the spring. The true challenge of winter quarters isn't just building the shelters. It's filling the endless hours that follow. With no battles to fight or marches to make, the army settles into a strange routine of limited duties and vast stretches of unstructured time. Daily roll call continues, along with drilling when the weather permits. Picket duty rotates through the companies, sending men to cold, lonely outposts along the river, where they watch for enemy movement through the swirling snow. Wood must be gathered constantly to feed the hungry fires. But these activities occupy only a fraction of each day. Boredom kills more soldiers than bullets in the winter, Miller tells Jenkins, who's grown restless after just a few days of confinement. A man's mind turns against him when it's got nothing to chew on but itself. Different men find different solutions to this problem. Some gamble endlessly, using cards, dice, or improvised games of chance to pass the hours and exchange the few coins they possess. Others write letters, filling pages with detailed descriptions of camp life, and carefully avoiding any mentions of the dead or dying that might worry their loved ones back home. Religious men form prayer groups, holding services in the larger huts or gathering around visiting chaplains. The more musically inclined organize impromptu concerts, with fiddles and harmonicas creating moments of beauty amid the frozen landscape. Your own squad develops its own rhythms for surviving the long winter days. Miller spends hours maintaining the equipment, not just his own, but everyone's in the hut. He shows you how to properly grease leather to prevent it from cracking in the cold, how to keep the rifle mechanisms functioning despite the frost, and how to waterproof your boots with a mixture of beeswax and tallow. Thomas becomes the group's designated cook, transforming the basic rations into something that approaches actual meals through the creative use of foraged ingredients and techniques he's learned from other soldiers. He masters the art of ash cakes, a simple cornmeal dough that's baked directly in the coals, and he creates a surprisingly tasty stew from salt pork, hardtack, and wild onions that he's dug from beneath the snow. Jenkins, the youngest, serves as the hut's connection to camp gossip and news. Something about his eager, boyish face makes others share information with him, and he returns each day with stories and rumors from all across the regiment. Some are obviously false, like the war ending by Christmas or the Confederates surrendering en masse, but others contain kernels of truth that help you understand the larger strategic situation. Your own contribution becomes unexpected. You discover a talent for storytelling that helps to fill the long evening hours. Having listened to the veterans' tales and absorbed their rhythms, you can now spin these into narratives that capture the squad's attention. Some are true accounts of the battles you've witnessed. Others are borrowed from books you've read or stories you've heard. But they all serve the crucial purpose of transporting your minds beyond the confines of the small hut. Tell the one about the cavalry charge again. Jenkins requests one particularly bitter night when the wind makes the chimney smoke, and the cold seeps through every crack despite your best efforts at insulation. You oblige, describing a dramatic skirmish you witnessed during the fall campaign, embellishing certain details for effect, but capturing the essential truth of men and horses moving like a single organism across an open field. The story serves multiple purposes. It's entertainment, certainly, but it's also an education for Jenkins, who has yet to see real combat, and a way for Thomas to process his own battlefield memories through the safer lens of someone else's words. Christmas arrives with little official recognition, but much improvised celebration throughout the camp. The company cooks produce a special meal. It's still salt pork and hardtack at its core, but it's supplemented with dried fruits, extra coffee, and even a small ration of whiskey that's been authorized by the colonel himself. Your squad exchanges humble gifts: a carved wooden pipe from Miller to you, extra socks that Thomas has knitted from unraveled blanket yarn, a surprisingly accurate sketch of the hut that Jenkins has drawn, which you all agree to mail home when it's possible. I never thought I'd be saying Merry Christmas to you sorry lot instead of my own family, Thomas says, his voice carrying both humor and a deep homesickness. But here we are, and I'm grateful at least for these walls and a fire. It's a sentiment that you all share, this strange brotherhood that's been formed by shared hardship. The men in this hut aren't the family you would have chosen, but they've become essential to your survival in ways that transcend mere physical assistance. The new year brings intensified cold and the first serious outbreaks of disease. Pneumonia, typhoid, and various fevers sweep through the camp, claiming victims on a daily basis. The regimental surgeon is completely overwhelmed. His hospital tent, now reinforced with wooden walls, is filled far beyond its capacity. Don't get sick if you can help it, Miller advises grimly after visiting a friend in the hospital. More men die from the cure than the disease in that place. Your hut adopts stringent health measures under Miller's direction. Regular airing out despite the cold, careful food preparation, and drinking only boiled water. Whether it's through these precautions or just simple luck, you manage to avoid the worst of the illnesses. Though all of you suffer from the persistent camp cough that becomes the soundtrack of the winter quarters, January brings another challenge: dwindling supplies. The frozen roads make wagon transport difficult, and the rations are reduced to their most basic components. Coffee becomes a precious commodity, carefully hoarded and rebrewed until it's little more than brown water. Fresh meat disappears entirely, leaving only salt pork and beef so heavily preserved it has to be soaked overnight just to be edible. Army logistics, Miller explains when Jenkins complains about the deteriorating food situation. In the summer and fall, they stockpile for the winter. By January, the supplies run low. By February, we'll be eating our boots unless the roads clear up. He's only half joking. The veterans tell stories of previous winters when men boiled their leather straps for soup, ate bark and roots, or went for days with nothing but melted snow and hardtack that was too worm-eaten to be recognized as food. Your squad supplements the official rations through a combination of foraging, trading, and occasional nighttime expeditions that Miller refers to as requisitioning, rather than the more accurate term, stealing. These activities exist in a gray area, officially prohibited, but tacitly accepted by the officers who know that hungry men make for poor soldiers. A particularly successful requisition from a sutler's poorly guarded wagon yields coffee beans, sugar, and most precious of all, tobacco. None of you were regular smokers in your civilian life, but in the cold isolation of the winter camp, pipes become essential companions. The ritual of smoking is as important as the tobacco itself. There's nothing worse than a bored, cold, hungry soldier with no tobacco, Miller observes, carefully dividing the precious leaves. That's when men start thinking about desertion. Desertion becomes a growing problem as the winter deepens. Each morning at roll call, new names join the list of those who have disappeared in the night, choosing the uncertain risks of flight over the certain misery of the camp. Most of them head north, hopping to lose themselves in the cities or remote rural areas before attempting to reach home. Some succeed, but others are captured by the roving cavalry patrols that are specifically tasked with retrieving deserters. The punishment for captured deserters is severe: flogging in minor cases, and execution for repeat offenders or those who deserted in the face of enemy action. Your regiment witnesses one such execution in late January. The entire command is formed in a hollow square around a freshly dug grave and a wooden post. The condemned man, a repeat deserter who was caught trying to cross the Union lines dressed as a civilian, faces his end with a strange calm that's more disturbing than fear or defiance would be. The firing squad does its work efficiently, and the regiment is marched past the fallen body as a warning against similar thoughts. It won't stop it, Miller says that evening, his face grim in the firelight. It might even increase it. Some men see death as preferable to one more day of this. February arrives with a temporary thaw that transforms the camp from frozen misery to liquid misery. The snow melts into mud so deep that moving between the huts requires boards to be laid down as walkways. The carefully dug drainage ditches around your shelter overflow, allowing water to seep through the ground and into your living space. For 3 days, you sleep on raised platforms of branches, while inches of water cover the floor of your hut. The fire sputters and nearly dies in the damp conditions. Everything, your clothing, your blankets, your food, develops a persistent moistness that breeds mildew and rot. "This is why I hate Virginia," Thomas grumbles, wringing water from his socks for the third time in a single day. "It can't make up its mind. It's too cold to live, then it's too wet to breathe. Just pick a misery and stick with it." The thaw brings one blessing, however: fresh supplies. The wagons are finally able to reach the camp, bringing not just basic rations, but actual mail, the first in nearly a month. Letters from home create a temporary lifting of spirits throughout the entire regiment. You receive 2 letters, one from your family with news that is both mundane and precious. Another, surprisingly, is from a neighbor's daughter who writes with an unexpected warmth about her hopes for your safe return. This second letter you read privately multiple times before carefully storing it in your breast pocket, close to your heart. Jenkins receives nothing. His family having moved without leaving a forwarding address. His disappointment is palpable. It's a reminder of just how young he truly is, despite his increasing adaptation to the soldier's life. "You can share mine," you offer, echoing the gesture Thomas made to you months earlier. "There's nothing private, just news from home." The boy accepts gratefully, listening intently as you read selected passages about local events, crop conditions, and community news. These mundane details of civilian life have taken on an almost mythical quality in the harsh reality of the winter camp. Mid-February brings renewed cold and a fresh challenge. An inspection by general officers who are touring the winter encampments. With just 3 days' notice, the regiment transforms itself from a collection of miserable, disheveled survivors into something that approximates a proper military unit. Uniforms are cleaned and mended as well as possible with the limited supplies. Weapons are polished to parade ground perfection. The paths between the huts are tidied up. The latrines are freshly dug and covered, and the horse pickets are reorganized. Most impressively, the men themselves undergo a metamorphosis. Beards are trimmed, hair is cut, and faces are actually washed with precious heated water. All this work for some general to ride through, nod his head, and then leave. Thomas complains as he scrubs his muddy boots with snow. The man probably sleeps in a requisitioned mansion with a feather bed and hot meals. The inspection itself is surprisingly brief. A collection of mounted officers moves through the camp at a trot, pausing occasionally to ask perfunctory questions before continuing on with their tour. The regiment stands at attention in the bitter cold for over an hour, only to be viewed for perhaps 5 minutes. "That's Army life," Miller says as you return to your hut, stamping the feeling back into your frozen feet. You hurry up and wait, then you hurry up some more for absolutely nothing. Late February brings rumors of coming action, Confederate movements across the river, Union forces repositioning, generals planning their spring campaigns. The camp stirs with anticipation that's mixed with dread. Winter misery has a certain predictability that battle lacks. I'd rather know I'm fighting the cold than wonder if I'm going to be catching a bullet tomorrow, Jenkins admits one evening, his young face serious in the firelight. The boy who arrived so eager for battle has been tempered by the months of winter hardship. March arrives with warming temperatures and increasing military activity. The drilling resumes in earnest. It's no longer the basic maneuvers of the earlier months, but complex battalion and regimental movements that are designed for the coming campaign season. Equipment is inspected, repaired, and replaced where possible. Ammunition is distributed. Weapons are test-fired and adjusted. The winter beard you've grown as protection against the cold must now be shaved off to allow for the proper fitting of your cartridge box strap. The simple hut that sheltered you through the worst months is cleaned out, its few accumulated comforts distributed or abandoned. It always feels strange leaving winter quarters, Miller observes as you pack your knapsack, deciding what few personal items merit carrying into the coming campaign. You've built yourself a home of sorts, and now you're just walking away from it. There's an unexpected emotion in dismantling the small space that has sheltered you through months of hardship. This crude structure of logs and clay has been more than just mere protection from the elements. It's been the setting for a unique kind of bond that's formed between men who might never have met in civilian life. The night before the marching orders are expected, your squad sits around the fire for a final evening in the hut. No one speaks much. Each man is lost in his own private thoughts about what the spring campaign might bring. Jenkins whittles nervously at a piece of pine. Thomas is writing what might be his final letter home before moving out. Miller is methodically checking his equipment, a ritual you've seen countless times now. "This might be our last night altogether," Thomas finally says, voicing what everyone is thinking. "There's no telling who comes back from the next scrap." "That's a cheerful thought," you reply, trying for a lightness you don't feel, but achieving only a strained humor. Miller looks up from his equipment check. "I've been through 3 winters in this army," he says. "Each spring, I make new friends to replace the ones who didn't make it." It's the nature of war. He returns to his work, then adds quietly, "But I hope we all get to sit around a fire again come next winter." It's as close to sentimentality as you've ever heard from him, and it creates a moment of silence that's broken only by the crackling fire. "We will," Jenkins says with the simple certainty of youth. "All of us." No one contradicts him, allowing the comforting fiction to stand. In this moment, on the edge of spring and renewed warfare, such hope seems like a necessary shield against the reality that's waiting just beyond the hut's door. The bugle sounds reveille before dawn, its notes carrying a different weight than the routine morning calls of the winter. This is a marching reveille, the signal that the winter pause has officially ended, that the business of war is resuming in earnest. You step outside into the gray pre-dawn light. Your knapsack is packed, your rifle is cleaned, and you have 60 rounds of ammunition in your cartridge box. Around you, the regiment assembles, forming into companies that seem painfully under strength after the winter's toll of disease and desertion. The huts that sheltered you through the months of cold now stand empty, already beginning to look abandoned, though their occupants still form up in the ranks nearby. In a matter of hours, these carefully constructed shelters will be just another set of ruins in a landscape that's increasingly defined by the artifacts of war. Forward march. The command ripples down the line, and the regiment moves out, leaving the winter quarters behind. No one looks back. It's partly from military discipline and partly from the superstition that many soldiers hold about not watching something recede that you hope to see again. The spring campaign has begun. The relative safety of winter confinement has given way to the uncertainty of active warfare. The bonds that were forged in that small hut will now be tested in a crucible of marching, hunger, fear, and ultimately battle. As your boots break the thin crust of frost on the road leading south, you realize something important has changed. During the winter months, you're no longer just surviving as a Civil War soldier. You've become one, fully integrated into this strange brotherhood of shared suffering and purpose. Whether that transformation will help you survive the coming campaign remains to be seen. But as the rising sun burns away the morning mist, illuminating the long blue column that stretches ahead and behind you, you feel a complex emotion that contains both dread and pride. You've survived a winter in the Union Army, something that thousands of others failed to do. Whatever comes next, that achievement can't be taken away from you. The question now is what price the spring will demand for its own passage. The war doesn't end for you with a grand battle or a heroic charge. It ends with a letter that's delivered to your regiment in early May of 1865, a full month after Lee's surrender at Appomattox. An honorable discharge, the captain announces, handing you the official paper with its ornate letterhead and formal language. For medical reasons. You're to report to Washington for processing and your final pay. You just stare at the document, trying to process what it means. After nearly 3 years of service, hundreds of miles marched, and a dozen battles survived, it all ends not with a bang, but with a bureaucratic whisper. The medical reason is clear enough. It's the lingering effects of a mini ball that found your shoulder during the Petersburg campaign last winter. The wound wasn't immediately life-threatening, but it never properly healed, leaving your left arm weakened and prone to painful spasms. You're no longer fit for infantry service, the Army surgeon had decided. It's time for you to go home. You're a lucky bastard, Thomas says without any rancor when you show him the discharge. He's changed dramatically from the farm boy who joined up with you back in '62. He's now a sergeant with hard eyes and a scar that pulls his mouth into a permanent half-grimace. The war's over anyway, we're just mopping up now. Miller is more philosophical about it. 3 years is enough for any man, he says, helping you pack your meager possessions. You've done your part. Of your original squad, only Miller, Thomas, and you remain. Jenkins didn't survive the wilderness. He was lost in that terrible, burning forest where men shot at muzzle flashes and fought unseeing through the dense underbrush. You never even found his body. So many were simply listed as missing after those chaotic days. Others had joined your squad, fought alongside you, and then died, or were wounded, or simply transferred elsewhere as the great shuffling of men continued on through the years of war. Their faces now blur in your memory, distinguished more by how they left than by who they were. The boy who took a shell fragment through the neck at Cold Harbor, the replacement who lasted only 6 hours before typhoid claimed him, the veteran from another regiment who stepped on a mine just outside of Petersburg. Saying goodbye is both harder and easier than you expected. It's hard because these men have been your entire world for 3 years. A family that was forged in experiences that no outsider could ever comprehend. It's easy because soldiers learn early on that attachment is a dangerous thing. Every friend you lose tears away a piece of yourself until there's nothing left to give. Write if you can, Thomas says gruffly, shaking your hand with an uncharacteristic formality. Stay away from windows, Miller advises with some gallows humor. Snipers love targeting the veterans who survived the whole damn war. The journey home is disorienting. From the disciplined environment of the regiment, you're suddenly thrust into the chaotic civilian world. The railroad stations are crowded with travelers. The cities are bustling with commerce, as if the war had been just a distant inconvenience rather than a national bloodletting. In Washington, you join hundreds of other discharged soldiers, all navigating a bureaucratic maze to receive their final pay and official papers. The process takes days, during which you sleep in boarding houses that are filled with men just like yourself, displaced warriors whose purpose has suddenly evaporated. The conversations in these temporary shelters reveal a universal uncertainty. What now? After years of having every decision made for you by others, every need, however poorly, provided for you by the army, how does one simply resume civilian life? "I'm going back to farming," announces a one-legged artillery sergeant from Ohio. "I can still plow with a peg leg. I just got to train the horses not to spook at it." "I'm opening a store," says another veteran, his empty right sleeve pinned neatly to his shoulder. "The Army taught me all about supply. I figure I can apply that to peacetime goods. Some have no plans at all, no homes to return to. The war had consumed everything they had left behind. Their farms were burned, their families relocated, their opportunities had vanished. These men speak vaguely of heading west, finding new beginnings in territories where the war's long shadow might not be able to reach. You listen to these discussions, but you contribute very little. Your own future remains undefined, clouded by the persistent ache in your shoulder and the more insidious pain that has no physical location but seems to permeate your very being. When your turn finally comes at the disbursement office, you receive $103.40, your final pay, your clothing allowance, and your travel stipend all combined. 3 years of your service have been reduced to a sum that would barely buy a decent horse in peacetime. "Sign here," the clerk says mechanically, pushing a form across the desk. This acknowledges receipt of your funds and terminates all claims against the United States government related to your service. You sign, watching your hand form the signature as if it belongs to someone else. That simple act severs the last official connection to your identity as a soldier. You are, on paper at least, a civilian again. The train journey home takes 3 days, passing through landscapes that still bear the scars of war. Burned-out farmhouses, fields lying fallow, bridges that have been hastily rebuilt after strategic destruction. At each stop, soldiers get on or off, some still in uniform, others already in civilian clothes but betrayed by their military bearing or the haunted look that's so common to veterans. You notice how the civilian passengers react to your presence, some with gratitude or respect, others with a sense of unease, as if your proximity to violence might somehow be contagious. A well-dressed businessman changes his seat rather than sit across from you, while a matron insists on giving you her basket of baked goods despite your polite refusal. They don't know what to make of us, observes an elderly veteran of both the Mexican and the Civil Wars who is seated beside you for one leg of the journey. They can't decide if we're heroes or killers, or maybe both. The truth is, we're just men who have seen things they can't possibly imagine and hope they never will. The final miles to your hometown pass with an increasing sense of anxiety. 3 years have transformed not just you, but potentially everything and everyone you left behind. Letters home, while regular, had conveyed only the most sanitized version of your experiences. How do you reconnect with people who knew the person you were, but cannot possibly comprehend the person you've become? The train station as much as you remember it, though a new monument now stands nearby, a simple obelisk that bears the names of the local men who didn't return. You scan it automatically, recognizing several names from your old neighborhood. No one meets you at the station. Your arrival date was uncertain, and telegrams are expensive. You shoulder your knapsack, the weight feeling familiar after years of carrying much heavier loads, and you begin the mile walk to your family's house. The town seems simultaneously unchanged and utterly different. The buildings stand right where you remember them, but the signs have changed. New construction has filled in the empty lots, and the people are engaged in normal activities that now seem completely alien to you. A woman is hanging laundry without scanning the horizon for smoke. Children are playing without falling silent at the sound of approaching footsteps. Men are arguing over business matters as if such concerns are a matter of life and death. You pass the general store where you bought your first pocket knife, the church where you sat through interminable sermons, the school where you learned to read and write. Each landmark exists in a kind of double vision, what it was in your memory and what it is now in reality. People glance at you, some with a dawning recognition in their eyes, others with the weary look that's reserved for strangers. Your uniform, which you've worn for the journey home because you own no other civilian clothes, marks you as a returning soldier. Several men nod respectfully. A former schoolmate starts to approach you, then hesitates, perhaps noting the difference in your bearing or the hardness in your eyes. Your family's house appears around the bend in the road. The familiar 2-story clapboard with its sagging porch and crooked chimney. Smoke is rising from the kitchen, suggesting that someone is home, preparing an ordinary meal on an ordinary day that is about to become extraordinary. For a moment, you consider continuing on past, just walking to the next town, the next state, anywhere but into the inevitable awkwardness of a reunion. How do you explain to these people who love you that the person they remember no longer exists? How do you tell them about Miller and Thomas and Jenkins and all the others without revealing the horrors that bound you all together? The decision is made for you when the front door opens. Your mother emerges, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun, alerted perhaps by some sixth sense that her child is approaching. She sees you, freezes for just a heartbeat, and then runs down the path with a cry that contains both joy and the release of years of pent-up fear. The embrace is both comforting and uncomfortable. Comforting in its genuine emotion, but uncomfortable in the intimacy you've grown unaccustomed to after years in the masculine world of the army. You return it stiffly at first, then with an increasing abandonment as something inside you finally breaks. "You're home," she says, pulling back to study your face with her tear-filled eyes. "My boy is home." Boy, the word strikes a discordant note. You haven't been a boy since you watched Jenkins bleed out in the wilderness, calling for his mother with his last breath. But you just nod, unwilling to correct her in this moment of reunion. The next few hours pass in a blur of emotions and introductions. Your father, grayer and more stooped than you remember, is pumping your hand with a fierce pride. Your younger siblings, some of whom are barely recognizable after 3 years of growth, are alternately shy and exuberantly curious about your experiences. Neighbors start arriving with food and questions and their tearful gratitude for your service. Through it all, you maintain the facade that they need you to. The returning hero, sobered by the war, but essentially unchanged. You answer their questions selectively, focusing on the camaraderie and the patriotism, and omitting the terror and the brutality. You accept their gratitude gracefully, though inside you question what exactly you accomplished that deserves such thanks. That night, given your old bedroom, which is now shared with a younger brother who watches you with an undisguised hero worship, sleep eludes you. The bed is too soft after years of sleeping on the hard ground or wooden bunks. The silence is too complete without the sounds of men coughing, shifting, and occasionally crying out from their nightmares. The safety is too absolute without the need to maintain a constant vigilance. Around midnight, you quietly get dressed and go outside, seeking comfort in the open air. The stars overhead are the same ones you watched from picket duty, from forced marches, from battlefield bivouacs where the wounded moaned all through the night. At least these constants remain, bridging your soldier life and whatever comes next. Couldn't sleep either, huh? The voice startles you. You've grown unaccustomed to being approached without noticing it. Turning, you see an older man sitting on a nearby fence smoking a pipe. Something in his posture signals that he's a fellow veteran before he even speaks further. "The Mexican War," he says, confirming your suspicion. "I came home in '48. Couldn't sleep indoors for a whole month." "How long?" you ask. The question encompasses far more than just the sleeping difficulty. He considers this, tapping his pipe against the fence post. The dreams, they last a few years. The memories, they never go away completely. The feeling of not belonging here anymore, that fades mostly. You just build a new life around the hole that's inside you. His frankness is refreshing after hours of well-meaning civilian platitudes. You join him at the fence, accepting when he offers you his tobacco pouch. "The town looks at us like we're either heroes or madmen," he continues. "The truth is somewhere in the middle. We've seen the worst of what men can do, and sometimes we did it ourselves. You can't expect to come back unchanged. My mother keeps calling me her boy," you say, voicing the discomfort that's been building since your return. The man chuckles without any humor. "My wife did the same thing. I had to tell her straight out. The boy she married died at Buena Vista. It took some time, but she came to know the man who came back instead." You talk on through the night. This stranger, who isn't really a stranger, is providing the one thing your loving family cannot, an understanding that's born of a similar experience. As dawn approaches, he offers you practical advice about navigating civilian life, dealing with unexpected memories, and finding a purpose after the war's cruel clarity. Join the Grand Army of the Republic when they form a local post. He suggests being with other veterans helps. Civilians mean well, but they just don't understand. The next few weeks establish patterns that will define your immediate future. Your days are spent helping with the family business, relearning civilian skills, and enduring well-intentioned inquiries about your so-called adventures. The nights often find you awake, sometimes walking until exhaustion finally forces you to sleep, sometimes writing letters to Thomas and Miller that contain the truths you cannot share with those around you. Your shoulder pain continues. Sometimes it's mild, sometimes it's debilitating. The local doctor, who has never seen a battlefield amputation or extracted a bullet while under artillery fire, prescribes ineffective tonics and suggests that the pain may be nervous in its origin, a diplomatic way of implying that it exists primarily in your mind. The nightmares come regularly. Tangled relivings of battles, the faces of the dead, moments of terror and guilt from 3 years of war. You learn to wake up silently, to calm your breathing before it alerts others, to just sit in the darkness until the images fade enough to attempt sleep again. The civilian clothes feel wrong on your body. The fabrics are too soft, the fit too loose after years of wearing a uniform. The civilian conversations seem trivial, focused on local gossip and business concerns rather than the life-and-death simplicity of war. Civilian priorities, like appearance, social standing, and minor slights, strike you as absurdly unimportant after watching men die for higher principles. The neighbor's daughter who wrote to you during the war becomes a bright spot in this difficult transition. Unlike the others, she doesn't press you for war stories or treat you like a curiosity. She simply walks with you, talks about books and ideas, and allows silences to exist without awkward attempts to fill them. "You don't have to pretend with me," she says during one such walk. "I don't expect you to be who you were before." "How can you know who I was before?" you ask, genuinely curious. "We barely spoke back then," she smiles. "I watched you more than you realized. But that's not what I mean. No one comes through something like that unchanged. I'd be worried if you seemed exactly the same." This acceptance of your transformed self, without any expectation of an explanation or a performance, creates a space where healing becomes possible. Not the complete erasure of the war's effects, but the gradual integration of your soldier and civilian identities into something new and sustainable. Summer passes into fall, and with the changing leaves comes news from your former comrades. A letter from Thomas describes the regiment's final operations and his own plans to head west rather than return to his family's farm. "There are too many ghosts in Ohio," he writes. "I need open country where a man isn't reminded of what he's lost with every familiar view." Miller's letter is briefer, but more immediately concerning. He's in a veteran's home in Hartford. His old war wounds have finally overcome his remarkable constitution. Between the lines, you can read about his deteriorating condition and his growing isolation. "You should go to him," the neighbor's daughter says when you share this news with her. "He was your brother in ways I'll never be able to understand." The journey to Hartford takes 2 days. Trains are once again carrying you through landscapes that still bear the war's scars. Though nature has begun the slow work of reclamation, the veteran's home proves to be a former mansion, repurposed to house the human wreckage of the nation's great conflict. Miller occupies a small room that he shares with another veteran. His appearance shocks you. The once sturdy frame is now gaunt. The weathered face is gray with pain, but his eyes light up with a genuine pleasure at your arrival. "I didn't expect you'd come," he says, his voice weaker, but still carrying that sardonic tone you remember. "It's a long way to travel for a dying man. You survived the peninsula, Gettysburg, and the wilderness," you reply, falling easily into the bantering tone that had served as affection between soldiers. "I'm pretty sure you'll outlive us all out of sheer stubbornness." His laugh turns into a cough, but the moment achieves what you intended, a reconnection to the bond that was formed through your shared hardship. For 3 days, you sit with him, sometimes talking about your wartime experiences, now safely in the past, and sometimes simply providing the companionship that needs no words. On the third night, he asks you to help him outside, wanting to see the stars one more time. You support his frail body to a garden bench where he sits, gazing upward with an expression of peace you rarely saw during the war. "It's a funny thing," he says after a long silence. "I spent 3 years trying not to die. Now I'm almost looking forward to it. I'm so tired of fighting, you know. You do know, though your own battle is different. It's not against physical deterioration, but against the memories and the habits that make civilian life so challenging." "I wanted to tell you something," Miller continues, his voice stronger as if he's drawing on some reserved energy for these important words. "You were a good soldier, not at first. You were green as grass when you first showed up, but you learned. You kept your head when others were losing theirs. You looked after your squad. A man couldn't ask for a better comrade." The simple praise coming from this man whose respect was so hard-earned means more than all the hero accolades from the well-meaning civilians. It acknowledges not just what you endured, but how you conducted yourself through that endurance. "I learned from the best," you reply, your voice rough with emotion. Miller snorts. "You learned despite the best, more like I made plenty of my own mistakes." He falls silent, then adds, "There's just one thing I want you to remember after I'm gone. We survived, not just the war. Anyone with a little bit of luck can do that. We survived with our humanity intact. We saw the worst that men can do, and we didn't become the worst ourselves. That's the real victory. Do you understand?" You nod, understanding completely. Miller dies 3 days later, slipping away quietly in his sleep. A peaceful end that seems almost unfair given the violence that had defined so much of his life. You arrange for his burial with his few possessions, including the tattered diary he kept throughout the war, which he explicitly left to you. The journey home feels different. It's the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. Reading Miller's diary on the train reveals a man who was more thoughtful, more troubled, and ultimately more hopeful than the stoic exterior he presented to the world. His final entries speak not of battlefield glory, but of his desire for the nation to heal, for all the sacrifices to mean something beyond just victory or defeat. Returning to your hometown, you find it transformed by the autumn. The harvest is underway, preparations for winter are beginning. The rhythms of civilian life are continuing as they have for generations before the war, and as they will for generations after. These cycles that once seemed so trivial now appear as the very foundation of what you fought to preserve. The neighbor's daughter, Catherine is her name. though somehow you've thought of her primarily by her relationship to you, meets you at the station. Something in her face suggests that a decision has been made during your absence. "I've been thinking," she says as you walk together through the fallen leaves, "about us, about the future. Have you now?" You respond, a lightness in your tone that would have been impossible just months earlier. "Life's too short for hesitation," she continues. "We've both seen enough to know that, so I'm asking you, would you consider building a life together? Not the life either of us might have had without the war, but something new, something that acknowledges what's happened but isn't defined by it." The directness of her proposal, so contrary to the traditional expectations of courtship, reveals how deeply she understands what you need. Not delicate illusions or social performances, but honest communication between equals. "I'm not whole." You feel compelled to warn her. "Parts of me are still out there, buried in Virginia and Pennsylvania." The nightmares might never completely stop. "No one comes through life unscathed," she replies. "My scars are different from yours, but they exist. I'm not asking for perfection, just for a partnership." Winter arrives with its crystalline beauty and isolated evenings. So different from the miserable winters of the campaign, yet it carries echoes in the way the frost forms on the window panes or the wind moans around the chimney corners. You find work that accommodates your injured shoulder. You begin courting Catherine with her parents' cautious blessing, and you establish a new routine that incorporates, rather than denies, your wartime experiences. The nightmares continue, but with a decreasing frequency. You still wake up sometimes in the grip of terror, momentarily confused about where and when you are. But the recovery comes quicker now. The return to your present reality is more immediate. An unexpected letter arrives in January. It's from Thomas, writing from the Nebraska territory where he's found work with a surveying company. His words carry a tentative optimism, a sense of possibilities that transcend the destruction you both witnessed. "It's a wide country out here," he writes. "There's room to breathe, room to forget, and maybe even room to build something new." Spring brings two significant developments. First, a local chapter of the Grand Army of the Republic forms, creating a community of veterans who understand the unique challenges of reintegration. Second, you and Catherine announce your engagement, planning a simple ceremony for the early summer. The GAR meetings become an essential part of your healing process. Among your fellow veterans, you can speak truths that civilians cannot bear. The shared experiences, both traumatic and transcendent, create bonds that require no explanation. Together, you navigate the complex territory between honoring your service and moving beyond it, between remembering the dead and living fully among the living. Your wedding day dawns clear and warm, the kind of perfect June morning that seems to validate the possibility of new beginnings. The ceremony itself is brief, attended by family and close friends, including several veterans who stand with an uncomfortable formality in their rarely worn suits. Catherine's vows include a line that brings unexpected tears to your eyes. "I promise to love both the man you were before the war, the man you became during it, and the man you are still becoming after it." The reception that follows has moments of genuine joy that are intermixed with the inevitable awkwardness as the civilian and military worlds attempt to integrate. You find yourself instinctively grouping the guests into categories: those who served and those who didn't, before consciously breaking this pattern, moving between the groups and building bridges. Late in the evening, you step outside for a moment of quiet, gazing up at the stars that have witnessed every human conflict, yet continue their indifferent journey across the heavens. Catherine joins you, her hand finding yours in the darkness. Are you happy? She asks simply. The question deserves an honest consideration. Happiness, as you once understood it, the uncomplicated emotion of your pre-war youth, no longer exists for you. What has replaced it is something more complex. Moments of joy that emerge from a background of hard-earned wisdom, an appreciation that's been deepened by the knowledge of the alternatives, a peace that's made meaningful by the memories of its absence. Yes, you answer finally. Not in the way I once would have defined it, but yes. She nods, understanding, as she so often does, what remains unspoken. Did you ever think during the worst of it that you'd be standing here someday? She asks. That survival was even possible. The question brings memories flooding back. The miserable winter quarters, the terror of the battle lines forming, the endless marches through dust and mud, the comrades who were lost to bullets and disease. Miller's face appears most vividly, his weathered features set in that characteristic expression of sardonic endurance. Sometimes, you admit, not often, but sometimes, there were men who never lost sight of the after, who carried pictures of home, who talked about what they'd do when it was all over. I think they survived better than those who couldn't see past the next battle. And you, what kept you going? You consider this, searching for the truth beneath the convenient answers. At first, it was just not wanting to die, then it was not wanting to let down the men beside me. By the end, I think, by the end, it was wanting to be worthy of coming back, wanting to be someone who could live in peace again without bringing the war back with him. She squeezes your hand. You are. Not because you've forgotten or because you pretend it didn't change you, but because you found a way to carry it without being crushed by it. As you stand there in the gathering darkness, the sounds of celebration continuing on behind you, you realize something profound. The question that has haunted you since your discharge, could you survive as a Civil War soldier, was only half the question. The full version, the one that truly matters, is, could you survive as a Civil War soldier and then learn to live as something else? The answer, you now understand, is yes. Not easily, not perfectly, not without scars, both visible and hidden. But yes, survival extends beyond the battlefield, beyond the hospital, and beyond the moment of discharge. It encompasses this harder, quieter struggle to reconcile what was with what is, to build something meaningful from the experiences that threatened to destroy everything that was meaningful. Miller's words return to you. We survived with our humanity intact. That's the real victory. Looking at the woman beside you, at the life that's stretching out before you, at the hard-won wisdom that now informs your understanding of both joy and suffering, you silently acknowledge the truth of his statement. The greatest victory was never about armies or flags or territory. It was about returning, not unchanged but undefeated in spirit, to build rather than to destroy, to love rather than to hate, to live fully in peace after seeing the worst of war. Come back inside, Catherine says softly. There are people waiting for us. You follow her toward the light and the sound of celebration, leaving the battlefield memories in the darkness where they belong. Not forgotten, never forgotten, but no longer controlling the path ahead. For the first time since your discharge, perhaps for the first time since your enlistment, you feel not just like a survivor, but like someone who might genuinely thrive in this hard-won peace. The question has been answered. You could survive as a Civil War soldier. And more importantly, you can survive as the man who comes after, carrying those experiences into a future that's limited only by your willingness to embrace it. As you sink deeper into your warm, comfortable bed, allow that thought to settle into your mind. The greatest courage isn't in fighting battles, but in continuing forward after they end, in choosing life even after witnessing so much death, in finding peace within yourself when the world has shown you its worst. Sleep now, knowing that survival, true survival, is always possible, even after the darkest of experiences. The human spirit has an extraordinary capacity to endure, to heal, and ultimately to transform suffering into a wisdom that makes life not just bearable, but beautiful.